Hi, this is Jim Bogios from Counting Crows, and you are listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast. Although it's very shocking tonight.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Isn't it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studios is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on Twitter at NoShockPod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Ragged Records, located in downtown Rock Island, Illinois, and downtown Davenport, Iowa. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is Jim Bogios
Of the Counting Crows.
Yeah, promoting their new upcoming summer tour. It's going to be a 4-month tour along with Dashboard Confessional. Hey, what a great interview.
Yeah, 20 years as a band member.
Absolutely. So, hey, let's get to that interview tonight.
All right, good night.
Good night. Jim, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Jim, thanks for joining us tonight.
It is my pleasure, gentlemen.
Well, you become highly regarded by Orion Salazar to get you on this podcast. So thanks to Orion for suggesting you to us, because he was the one saying, you got to get this guy on your podcast.
Orion's the best, man. He great bass player, great dude.
Absolutely. So, well, Counting Crows are preparing for a 4-month U.S. tour with Dashboard Confessional as the opening act. Not many bands, heritage acts like you, are taking on such a daunting task by going out on the road for 4 months. So, kind of tell us a little bit more about this aggressive touring schedule.
Well, you know the phrase "happy wife, happy life." It's happy singer, happy band,
Yeah.
and our boy is just Adam, our singer, Adam Duritz, is really excited to play and motivated, and so away we go. And I think after COVID, I'm sure you hear this a lot, but a lot of people just have changed their attitude or had an awakening and an appreciation for everything. I think the audience is that way, the band is that way, and we've been working, since we were able to. We actually pulled off a tour between the variants somehow, and then we went to Europe, and then we just got back from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and then we're doing the 4 months in the States. So we're ready. I mean, it's fun. You get to go out there after 30 years, and people still come out to see you play. So we're pretty lucky.
Oh, absolutely. You guys are touring in support of, I think, the last. I think it was an EP, the Butter Miracle Suite One. Can you talk?
That is correct.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that? The making. I think there's 4 tracks on there. Can you talk a little bit about the making of that EP?
Yeah, we had taken a long kind of hiatus, and finally we're going to get together to play again. So Adam had these songs, and we went into the studio in New York and started to record them. And as we were there, the pandemic hit. And so every day, you go to the studio and then we got, CNN on and we're all just kind of freaking out. And if you remember, New York was pretty much the starting place in the U.S. for it. And it was getting worse and worse. And you start to think like, okay, maybe I should talk to them about going back early. And then one day that became, I'm going home, I'm not asking, and I'd already recorded my tracks actually, and I was hanging around to do background vocals. And then I bailed out, and that was right around St. Patrick's Day. But, so then we did this EP and we were really proud of it and we thought it sounded great. And then we didn't put it out for a while because there was no way we could tour. So we just sort of sat on it. So it was the timing was horrible. We hadn't worked at all. And then finally we go into work and then we do something and then the pandemic hit. So we had to wait on that. But then finally, things eased up and we put it out and we toured. And I'm really proud of that. The way we put it out, you're supposed to listen to all the songs. They kind of connect together, but they're all different songs. You can listen to them on your own. But when we play it live, we do it as a whole suite.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. Well, this would lead to the next question. Counting Crows have always been a album-oriented band. The trend now is releasing singles at a time as the popular norm. But releasing an EP is still kind of like a thing to do off and on. Can you talk a little bit more about the band's decision to release an EP opposed to a full-length LP?
I'd love to have a better answer than it's probably just we had the 4 songs. And, Adam is the main writer in the band, sure. But he writes with other people in the group. And he's this type of guy that he doesn't write all the time, but then he'll have some kind of inspiration and just bust out a bunch of great songs. And that's kind of what happened here. And, we go a long time between records, but we've been around a long time and people got wives and lives and then, eventually we'll record. But I think, the idea was he had these 4 songs and, made it a suite. We wanted it to all kind of go together. And so that's what we did. And then, actually Elevator Boots, the single did really well, but it's just, I don't know what that means. I mean, AAA radio, a #1 hit back in the day, that would have really been something. But now It's just okay, great. They're still around. It's not a bad thing, but it doesn't mean what it used to, that's for sure.
Absolutely. I'm going to steal the next question from Jeff. Anyway, but I wanted to take this back to the touring schedule. You guys just returned from touring New Zealand, Australia, and South Africa. As far as fan support has gone post-COVID now, I guess post-COVID restrictions, venue-wise, is the fan support been like what it was, or have you noticed anything different post-COVID now?
It's been, kind of business as usual, except you try to be a little more careful. But I definitely have noticed that people really miss music, and you can feel, that with the band, you can feel it with the audiences, and just we have such an appreciation to be, we're at it this long and you still play in these places and all these people come out and, you just feel really fortunate to still have fans. And we actually played, some places we never have. One of them was Israel, and that was amazing. And who knew we had that many fans? I mean, it was I don't know, 6,000-8,000 people, something like that. It was a huge show, and people had been waiting their whole, lives, I guess, for us to come out there. I mean, that's what it felt like, and it was really an intense experience. And it's also cool at this point to go to a place you'd never been. You go into Bethlehem and all that kind of stuff. It was very cool.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Jeff, you got the next one?
I mean, you've been a member now for 20 years. You're not the new guy anymore. How's that? The band dynamic works. As far as when you're out on tour, they still give you, they still razz you a little bit, or how's it work?
Well, I mean, I brought in the bass player after I came in, but the other guys are original. But it's like we're brothers, you know. It's a big family, and we go through the ups and downs like any family. But I think there's a definite love and a respect and an understanding of each other, and that happens through time and going through all these things. And not to go back to the COVID thing, but I think it really gave us time to reflect and understand each other better, you know, the strengths, the weaknesses. And I think when you see a band that the people are close and it's a real band, that comes off on stage. And you can, you know, the opposite is true when there's problems. That's going to come out as well, whether it's a sports team or a band. Those things really show if you're looking, you can kind of tell. And I will say that this is the closest and the best vibe we've had in all the 20 years I've been here. And I've talked to the other guys in the band, and they say it's the best in the whole 30 years. So, that's you know, awesome. All these kind of things happen that are unexpected, and you just enjoy it. I guess that's all you can do, and ride it out.
Oh, so cool. Jeff,
well, just to follow on, when you joined, I think you came in on the Hard Candy tour. What kind of, was that a daunting task to just kind of jump in there and pick up on these songs that are, you know, are kind of almost like radio iconic already?
It you know, I'm used to it because I was a sideman for a lot of bands, and you know, I've had experience wearing the different hats, and you know, you want to go in and kind of have. You want to catch the important things and the essence of the songs and the things that, like you said, that are kind of iconic, or, you know, you can, you know, maybe a certain part of the song that you've got to play a certain way. And then slowly you bring your own thing into it. And also you're just going to play the way that you do, period. So it's kind of a combination of those things. I remember, you know, when I first got in there, I hadn't hardly played any gigs, and we did a live record, you know, at the Heineken Music Hall. Right. So and it was being taped, so that was like right off the bat. And I also remember, you know, I'm learning all these songs, and Adam, the singer, keeps adding songs, and I'm barely up to speed on the songs that we're already doing, and I'm thinking, like, is this guy just messing with me? Is he testing me? And through time, I just realized, like, he loves to change the set list up, and we have a really rich catalog of songs, and so he wants it to be different every night, and I love that about the band, because I've been on those tours where you're doing the same song in the same order for, you know, a year and a half, and it gets tough, you know, to find inspiration. So having some different songs on the set list every night can be the one thing that triggers you to just have a good show and bring something else out. You know, that said, people that go to a show, they may not hear exactly what they want to, but I think that the songs are so strong that we can do that. And it keeps, you know, us playing an honest show and people coming back. You know, if you hear multiple shows, you're gonna get something different.
Nice.
Well, with Counting Crow's body of work being so vast, you know, how is it that the band puts a set list together? I mean, obviously there are just songs that you have to play. You just have to. But as far as you know, from tour to tour, is there a method to the madness when it comes to putting a traditional set list together?
Well, Adam gets together with Immergluck, one of the guitar players, before, and they kind of shoot things around and just write it up. And if any of us want to play a song, you know, we put in requests. But I think it's more just what's been going on, or if there's an older song that someone hasn't played in a long time and is itching to play, you'll just, you know, bug them, and then it'll show up on the set list. So there's no real method other than that. And going for inspiration, if someone really wants to hear a song, you know, you just get your 2 cents in there, and hopefully it'll show up on the list that night or sometime soon.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Counting Crows performs yearly at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. How did the band get involved as entertainment for such a notable golf tournament?
Yeah.
Oh, well, now that's not Counting Crows, actually. That's just me.
That's just you doing it.
That's just me doing it, and I've been doing it with my buddy Jerry Becker, who's the music director for the band Train, and we've done it a few years in a row now, and we basically just put a band together and back up all the different artists that play there, and there's all these different people that play at the golf tournament, and part of the deal of them doing it is they have to play some songs. They do these different concerts during the week. So we're the band that backs everybody up.
Nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really cool because, one, like there's all sorts of great artists in different styles, which I really love. You'll do a Lucas Nelson, we really love playing with him, Willie Nelson's son. I don't know if you guys have ever checked him out, but he's great. And then we'll, do Macklemore or Darius Rucker or, Lady A, like it's kind of all over the map. And that's the way I kind of think of myself as a musician, to be able to wear these different hats and play all these different styles. And that's kind of helped me. My dad was a musician, and he told me when I'm young, learn all the styles and maybe you can make a living. And it was pretty good advice. He told me that when I was 12.
Yeah.
He said, if you want to put half the energy into something else, you could do a lot better. But, it's good to think about that as an up and coming musician, and it makes you better at whatever style you're playing. As well.
My apologies. I was under the assumption it was the Counting Crows that were doing this, and I kind of slighted you. So my apologies for that, Jim.
Oh no, it's all good. I don't know if I could get them to do. I could get a couple guys from the band to do it, but it's something I do outside. And that's the thing. We all do other things outside the band, but it's not like back in the day when I was a sideman where I could do these other gigs once the money stops with the retainer. When you're a band member, anything that I do, it's with the understanding if I get Counting Crows gets a corporate gig or a one-off, like I have to be there. So that's kind of it makes it a little tougher to do the things like I used to on the side projects, but you sneak them in when you can. And that's one that we do every year. And it comes at a time of year where we're not usually touring, so it works out okay.
Excellent.
Yeah, well, that's what we're here for, to learn more about you, so it's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff, you got the next one?
Have drums, will travel, right?
Well, yeah, talk a little bit more about being a sideman. I know, can you compare and contrast being in a band versus being a sideman?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I love about when I was a sideman for Sheryl Crow for 8 years. I did Dixie Chicks, Stevie Nicks, Ben Folds. Like I was going around. Sheryl was my main thing, but then when we got on a break, I would do other things. But that's the thing I miss about it the most. When I was talking about playing different styles, playing different groups, you never know what's going to come next. And which is again both a positive and a negative, because you're also thinking, oh crap, when a gig is stopping, like where else am I going to get work? You always have to be hustling for the next thing. But something always came for me, and that was fun, just the variety. Being in a band, I like the brotherhood of it all, and also you're the guy. You're not looking over your shoulder, and there's certain side gigs that I do where you wouldn't always get all the studio cuts.
Oh yeah.
Now with Sheryl, I always got some, but she uses a lot of different people in the studio, and that kind of thing, it gets to be a little rough. But I looked at it this way: like when I got that gig in '96, there were people that had the gig before me that had never played on one of her records, and then they lost their jobs. So I was doing all right. I always got some cuts, and I kept my gig, and then eventually made the move from Sheryl to Counting in like 2003.
Well, I guess that would lead me to, I guess maybe a lot of people would want to know is the transition from being the drummer for Sheryl Crow opposed to being the drummer for Counting Crows. Can you talk about the similarities and maybe some of the, I guess maybe the opposites of the writing and recording process before each artist, Adam to Sheryl? How does it work? How did it work? Am I making sense?
Yeah, everybody has their own process, and the thing that I found really interesting with Counting Crows, because I'll do side gigs and sessions, and I even do recording from home like a lot of people do, and all of them have pluses and minuses. Counting Crows was interesting because I've never been in a band. We don't do any kind of pre-production, so there's no rehearsals or anything before we go in the studio. So you'll be taking a bare bones demo, like maybe just Adam and a piano, and then you're going in the studio and you're going to record that song. And it's challenging because a big part of the creative process is still happening in the studio. So you have to be patient, and things aren't always going to be really good at first, and that can be a headache when you're really striving. And we don't even know what the groove's going to be, so we're really going in there bare bones. But also you can find the spontaneity in that, and it's awesome when you're learning a song and you're working through things, and then you get that take where you know what's going on, but you're still kind of searching. You know what I mean? And instead of just like, exactly what you're going to play and it sounds kind of tired. So sometimes when you can find that take, when you're just, figuring out what you're going to do, it can really, it can be exciting. So that's what we strive to do. But, it happens sometimes. It doesn't happen other times. And then, there's 7 guys in there all trying to so it can be a bit chaotic. We're very old school that way, where we're all playing together and then we want to get the take. And then from there, we can do overdubs and clean it up.
One of my favorite Counting Crow songs is 1492 off of Saturday Nights and Sunday Mornings. That's kind of a pretty rockin' tune. Do you have a story behind that one at all?
Well, it's interesting because they had recorded that song before, but it didn't make the record. Okay. And that was one of my first recordings with the band too. Yeah. So it was really important. You look at the band's body of work. You don't want the first album you're on to be the shitty Counting Crows record. So I was so like, okay, man, we gotta. It was really important to make it sound good. But they had done that song, and they wanted me to record drums over it. So the song was already kind of done for the most part, and but it needed a little more kick, a little, So I would just do, I did about 3 or 4 takes, and every time between takes, I was just feeling crazy, and I would be running around like in circles in the studio, just getting myself hyped, and then I'd sit down and I'd do the take.
Nice. Very good. Well, you talked about being a sideman for many different artists. You've been a sideman for the Dixie Chicks. You've been a sideman for Ben Folds. I guess, the transition from going from a country pop act like the Dixie Chicks, then to drum for a person such as a singer-songwriter like Ben Folds. And you already kind of alluded to, your dad said, learn how to play all styles, right, to make it in this business. Did you find the transition going from something like a Dixie Chicks to a Ben Folds challenging, or did you feel like it was almost like effortless for you?
I think it could be challenging. It's interesting you bring up those groups because it just makes me think of that certain time. I was doing the Sheryl thing, and then I met the Dixie Chicks on the Lilith Fair. We were on Lilith Fair. They would come and do some shows, and they would sit in with us, and then we'd also do a song at the end of the night with Sarah McLachlan's band, and I was playing drums. And every time we would play with the Chicks, I'd be rocking out with the singer, Natalie, and, you could just feel there was something there, and she'd be turning around looking at me, and And then they called and I got the gig. I was on a break with Sheryl. And then at that time I also played with Stevie Nicks and then Amy Grant came. I was kind of like becoming the drummer for the female stars for a little bit there. You know, it was all female artists for like 8 years. But during that time I did some really big gigs and like you alluded to, you're wearing these different hats. And of course some of yourself is going to be in these gigs, but you also want to, you know, okay, I'm going to be country. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be that. And you start to lose yourself a little bit. And so about the time after the Dixie Chicks, I was kind of feeling that way, just like I was losing myself. And Ben Folds called. And that gig, like Ben really pushed me to be me. And like the further I would go outside, the more he liked it. And it was kind of like, it was a life-changing gig. Like I owe Ben so much because it just gave me a renewed confidence in myself and also like helped me find my voice. And playing in that band was where I met Millard, the bass player. And then later on I brought him into Counting Crows.
Oh, very good.
So it was really, that band was so great. And it was the first time Ben had guitar. Basically Millard and the guitar player was named Snooze. They were the original Ben Folds 5 guys that from North Carolina. Yeah. And Ben had different reincarnations of Ben Folds 5. The Ben Folds 5 as we know it were the guys that were with him when he got signed. And then when he broke that band up and did his solo record, he brought the original guys that were in his band in there, and that was Snooze and Millard. And then they had a drummer and things weren't working out. And the I'm going off here, but the John McCrae, the singer for Cake, had called Ben and said, I know you're auditioning drummers. You know, if it doesn't work out, I've got the guy for you. And he gave my name, and you know, he didn't know me at all. And every time he'd come back from rehearsal, he told me this later, he'd see this name and things weren't totally right. So finally he just called me up and I went down into the LA and we played together, and it was just one of those things that was right.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
You know, before that you got the Counting Crows gig, you know, you were under the title of hired gun sideman. Yeah. It always seems like the hired gun is the term that's used now. For you, the musician, did you like having that title of being a hired gun or a sideman, or did you miss that, hey, being a band member? Or did it really matter for you as being the musician?
I prefer being a band member. And, you know, I was in a band in the Bay Area called Papa's Culture, and the band was kind of ahead of its time. It was very eclectic, you know, and you go to the record store, we were signed, and they didn't know what to do with us. And back then, everything had to be kind of labeled. And, you know, you go into one record store and we'd be in the reggae section, and then the other in the pop, and then another in the rock. And they just, you know, for us, we were just playing music. I wish, you know, in a perfect world, I would have got to the kind of commercial heights that I wanted to be in that band, but it didn't happen. But it was still great with that band, and so many people from that band went on to have really great careers. So when it got to the point I realized, like, okay, things are kind of settling down with this band and I'm not getting to the places I want to go, I started to look for other side gigs, you know, because that just seemed at that point like an easier way to make that jump than to, you know, start all over again with the band and try to work your way up. But at that same time, when I got the gig with Sheryl, I always thought, like, okay, eventually I want to work my way back in a band. But once you start doing the sideman things for 8 years, you want to make sure it has to be a band that's established. Because there was one point actually where I was going to put a band together with one of the guys from the Dixie Chicks, and I was going to move to Nashville and we were going to share everything. But at this point, I realized, like, okay, a percent of zero is still zero. And and that's not a diss on the band. It's more the music business, and at this point in my career, if I was going to make that kind of jump, it would have to be with the band that's established. So when Counting Crows came up, I jumped on it. But I also looked at, okay, this band's future, their past and their future. They still write great songs.
Yes.
It could kind of turn into a classic rock thing on a smaller level, but an example would be like the Stones or Tom Petty on a smaller level. But my point is being able to play well into your career as you get older and still have a career. So that was kind of what made my decision.
Well, very good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many bands out there that, Counting Crows easily could sit there and tour their hits for the rest of your career, but you guys continue to make new music, which is just awesome. Do you guys talk about that? Are you guys planning to continue making new music?
Oh, totally. I mean, we hopefully we'll get back in the studio after we do this after a break, after this long touring that's coming up. You guys got me thinking about 4 months on the road. It's actually going to be a little easier than what we just did because I was flying every day, and I know it's hard to complain, like, poor, rock and roll musician touring the world.
Yeah.
But when you're flying every day, it kind of sucks, or every other day. I mean, even when it's a smaller flight, it still takes the whole day.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of a grind. I mean, it'll be nice to just get back to the bus and that kind of schedule in the U.S. a little easier. Things are just easier when you're closer to home.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. So, you were exposed to rock and roll royalty while you were in the studio with Sheryl Crow on multiple occasions. Can you talk a little bit about more of those experiences that you had with some of the rock and roll greats?
Man, that was one of the really fun parts of playing with Sheryl, and I happened to. She'd be the first to say this, but I hear her during the best and biggest part of her career. The timing was awesome, but all the classics loved her and she loved them, and so they would always come and sit in and play with us, and we got to record with them, and the Stones, and I mean I started to make a list of all these people I had played for. And so early on, when I was touring with her, we have all these people sitting in all the time, all these people you've, grown up listening to. You can't believe you're sitting there playing with, Steve Winwood or, Levon Helm, and that was just a daily thing. So of course the business people want to recreate that. So one of the first things we did right after we got off the road was a VH1 special with, trying to recreate what we did on the road. So we brought all these people in that sat in with us. And this was early days for me in the gig. And we were playing with Levon and James Taylor and Emmylou Harris and Steve Winwood. And we're doing the rehearsals for this thing. Sorry, it just makes me think of this story. And, James Taylor asked, and I'm like 25, 26 years old. James Taylor asked Levon, who's playing mandolin, "Oh, why don't you get back on the drums?" And I'm thinking, "Oh shit," because I want to do it. And and Levon was like, "No, I think I'll stay up here." And I'm like, "Yes." And then we keep playing, and James Taylor won't leave it alone. He keeps asking Levon. And I'm sitting right there, and after a while it gets kind of rude. And in my head I remember I'm just thinking, shut the fuck up, James Taylor. That's all I can think. And of course it's always James Taylor. You have to say his last name with it. Yeah. And so he does it again. I'm just like sitting there, shut the fuck up, James Taylor. And I'm looking at him. He probably can see it on my face. And then finally Levon just goes, James, I think my buddy Jim has got it all taken care of back there. And that was it. And Levon is one of my, absolute heroes. And so to just have him stick up for me, but also just getting the thumbs up for me, when I'm like a 25-year-old drummer was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was just normal kind of everyday stuff with Sheryl at that time. I mean, all these people. I mean, eventually we did one thing in Central Park. That's a live record. It's called Sheryl Crow and Friends, and it was the same type of thing with all these people that would sit in with us. I think, Keith Richards was there, Eric Clapton. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, that was the first time those guys had been together, like on stage or even talked for years, because they had the wife thing. You remember all that?
Yes.
Back in the day.
Yes.
So we another story, another quick story, but it's a good one. That, this was our stab at bringing the rock legend guitar players together. So each person has their little allotted rehearsal time. And when Clapton was done, we got to play White Room and all that stuff. I mean, come on, you get to play White Room with Clapton at Central Park. But anyways, when we were done with Clapton, we were going to do a song, Tombstone Blues, Dylan tune that everyone was going to sit in on. And so we started to rehearse it, and Clapton is sitting on my drum riser, and, the song's kind of and all of a sudden from the left on the side of the stage, I see Keith Richards with the guitar on like a gunslinger, just kind of like moving in place, and he's just staring at Clapton. And he's just moving across the stage, playing this little rhythm guitar, just making a beeline for him. And we knew all the history and that these guys hadn't talked and just all this stuff that had gone on before. And Clapton's he knows he's there, but he won't look at him. And so he's just looking straight ahead. And then finally he makes his way over to my drum riser, and he's just kind of right in his face. And then the song falls apart. For some reason, the teleprompters weren't working. And then, so we stopped playing, and Keith Richards is just like, does those things tell you how to play rock and roll? He's just dissing the teleprompters. And then he starts talking to us, but at Clapton. This guy, he needs to lighten up. He needs to have a drink. He says he needs he's a recovering alcoholic and does all these things and he's saying all this kind of stuff. And then he takes this, he needs this more than me, help him keep time. And he puts a watch in his pocket. And I seriously think these guys are going to fight. Like, I'm going to be in here in the middle of the rock legend guitar players getting in a fight. And what I learned later was that watch was a Rolex that he had given him, Clapton had given to Keith Richards way back in the day as a gift. And he was giving it back to him and stuck it in his pocket. Wow. And I'm just sitting there watching all this, like, I don't know what to do, and I don't say anything. I'm kind of smiling at Keith Richards, but I'm trying to not disrespect Clapton at the same time. So right after he gave him the watch, the teleprompters came back on, and we started in on the song, and that was it. They didn't he left, and that was it. They never talked again, as far as I know. So we didn't do very good at putting the rock legend guitar players back together.
If not anything else, great stories.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, I got some good stories.
Absolutely. All right, so we're kind of running out of our allotted time here, so I got one last question for you.
Because my stories are too long.
No,
you're doing great.
This has been fantastic. The mystery of rock and roll. It's not what it was with the dawning of the internet and social media. For you, the musician and the fan, what do you prefer more, the mystery of the old days or this new age of accessibility? Because let's face it, if we didn't have the internet, we wouldn't be doing this with you right now.
That's so true. That is a really great question. We could have had a whole episode just on this question. Yeah. I'll tell you the first thing that comes to my mind. Okay, you're telling me this, and I'm thinking about. Remember the Osbournes, the reality show?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That ruined everything. Yeah. There's the Prince of Darkness. I'm watching this show, and he's there like emptying the freaking garbage, right? And fiddling with the remote and kind of walking around the house like a zombie. I'm like, man, this is not. I don't want to see this, And I mean, I'm old school. I'm thinking about, growing up, and remember Kiss Alive 1?
Yes.
And they had the little letters to the fans.
Yes.
Yep. And you read the letters, and Ace Frehley's like, "Oh, the gravity here on Earth is different from where I'm from." And I'm like, man, not only are these guys rock stars, they're not even from Earth. I mean, that is rock and roll. Not like the Prince of Darkness can't work his TV remote, and he's walking around the house like a So it makes me think about that, but it again, there's so many angles you could come at this one. Look at albums to CDs, right? When we went to CDs, you lost the artwork, and all of a sudden you can stick 15 songs on a CD. So everybody does, even though there's a bunch of songs that shouldn't even have made it on the record.
Right.
And who needs that long? I mean, the album was a perfect length.
Yeah.
And the artwork mattered, the order of the songs, all that lost, and then when they started burning music, then that was even, back in the day, you'd put out a record and tour to support your record. Then all of a sudden you just put out a record so you could tour.
Right.
So, I'm a Mystique guy. I miss it. I mean, that's why I don't think rock and roll should be played during the daytime. There's no mystery to that. I mean, night, it's like the lights, everything. It's exciting. I don't want to know what the hell the people are doing backstage. You can only imagine.
Exactly. Exactly.
But there are great things about technology and doing this and access to all these things, people being able to record from home, and there's no way you can stop it. So you really need to embrace the things, the good things about it that you enjoy, and then just try to deal with the things that you don't, because you're not going to stop it.
Yeah, well said. Is there anything else that we left off tonight that you'd like to plug or promote?
Matt, I would just say, if you see us out there somewhere, I mean, wherever you are, if you're in the U.S., we're going to get out there. And, this band, I think it's a great live band, and there's a reason we've been around for 30 years. So come out and see us. How about that?
Oh, fantastic. All right, so this is how things are going to work out. We're about 3 weeks behind on our episodes. So once Jeff, the editing wizard over here, gets it all cleaned up, I will send you the link immediately. Please share it wherever you can.
Indeed, I will.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, thanks a lot, you guys.
Take care of yourself.
Okay, you too.
All right, bye-bye.
You can have the air you need. Everybody pulls the plug and says their last goodbyes. Move to the sunshine, fight the grip of nights. If they ever say